When you first launch Intralism, you are greeted by the tutorial. It starts off simply enough, but by the end of it, you may end up more confused than when you started. The tutorial tells you to play with WASD or the arrow keys, but then also expects you to hit the up and down arcs at once, and then all 4 arcs at once. That can be pretty difficult if you play with only one hand and 3 fingers. Surely this can't be the only way to play Intralism, right? Hello, Flying Rabbit Unicorn Pig here, and this is Welcome to Intralism, a video series to help you learn the ins and outs of Intralism. If there is a topic of the game you would like me to cover, please ask in a comment below and I'll see what I can do. In this video, we will be covering different playstyles of Intralism to help you find a style that fits you. One of my favorite things about Intralism is the fact that the Judgment Circle encourages a variety of playstyles. Other rhythm games like Osmania or Stepmania seem to be best played with one of a few styles, due to the linear track layout and the notes falling in one direction. In the Intralism community, however, one of the most popular conversation topics is what playstyle each player uses. The most obvious contrast in styles is that many players will play with one hand, and many players play with 2 hands. But even then, there's sub-styles for both one-handed and two-handed. I'll be going over the more common styles in this video. I will discuss the pros and cons of each to help you find a style that you want to play with. Before we get started though, I want to make it very clear that the names I give these styles are not official in any way. Some of these names are already commonly used by the community, but other names like Claw and Staggered I've come up with on my own. If you think you have a better name for a style, by all means, use that name instead. This kind of stuff is for the community to figure out, not an individual on YouTube. So spread your style name out there loud and proud. Without further ado, let's start off with the one-handed styles. One-handed styles seem to be the way the game was intended to be played. When you play the tutorial, it tells you to use WASD or the arrow keys. The 4 directions that arcs fall from suggest that the player should use a directionally influenced layout. Because the game was built around this directional style, most players find it easier to learn a one-handed layout than two-handed. While one-handed styles have ease of access, it is noticeably harder to master the one-handed styles. Difficult maps prove to be a real challenge for most one-handed players, as the dexterity and stamina from one hand is not as great as that from 2. For the first style, we have the obvious layout, default style. If you want to use your left hand for default, you will probably use WASD or IJKL. For your right hand, you will likely use the arrow keys, IJKL, or 5123 on the number pad. Usually people will play with 3 fingers for this style. That does mean it's hard to hit up-down doubles though. Some players will hold their middle finger in a position that makes it easy to hit these doubles, while also easy to tap either up or down individually. Some will hit up-down arcs by flattening their finger. Default is usually the easiest style for new players to learn, and is what most casual players will use when playing Intralism. Some competitive players use this style too. Demonic Platypus and Glass Smash are 2 players in the top 50 who use the default style. While 5321 is on the numpad, it's a part of the default style because of its similar layout. If you want to use a true numpad style, you just need to turn off numlock. You can use the numpad like arrow keys. Some numpads will have printed arrows on the keys, but in case yours doesn't, 8 is up, 4 is left, 6 is right, and 2 is down. This makes it a little more comfortable if you want to use your thumb to hit the down arcs, and you're not as likely to misclick notes since the keys are spaced out. But it can be really awkward to play at the same time. And if you decide to play numpad style without your thumb, the annoyances of default with up and down arcs magnify with this style. If you like the idea of using your thumb while one-handed, then this next style may be the one for you. Claw style is almost identical to default, but instead of using S or K for hitting down arcs, you use your thumb to hit the spacebar instead. So, WAD+Space or IJL+Space. It can be a little uncomfortable for some, but it is more of a natural position than numpad, and can rid of the annoyances that default layouts have. Daikirai has played with this style, and has also encouraged other players to give it a try. If you decide to try out this style, remember to unbind spacebar from the power-up binds. Otherwise, you'll accidentally miss every time you press space, and that can be frustrating. Now, onto the two-handed styles. Two-handed styles are what most competitive players will use, as the physical stress you endure when playing Intralism is divided over both hands, allowing for better stamina and faster button presses. Many competitive players also come from other competitive rhythm games where using two hands is the norm. It is a lot harder for most people to adjust to two hands though. Two-handed players need to jump through the extra mental hoop of figuring out which direction corresponds to what finger and key. After some time, this does become second nature, but that initial learning period can be tough for some players. The most common two-handed style is flat, where you use two fingers on two hands on the same keyboard row. Flat style comes from other rhythm games like Osmania, where the default bindings for 4K Mania is DFJK. The left hand handles DF, and the right hand is on JK. Flat style isn't limited to these keys though. I personally play with UI in the brackets on the keyboard. While my fingers are on the top row of the keyboard, other players are more comfortable with their fingers on the home row, like when you're typing. Other players are more comfortable spreading their arms out, like with having the left hand on the keys and the right hand on the numpad. Other players prefer to play with their hands much closer together, like FG, HJ. And some players prefer somewhere in between, like ZX and comma period. Your fingers don't necessarily need to be on the same row either. I've seen players who have had their left hand on the top or home rows and their right hand on the down and right arrow keys. I would still consider this flat since each hand is only on one row of the keyboard. Most top 10 players use flat. Sozo, Rayan, Adri, I, Dantaz, Leverhides, and so on. If you want to learn two-handed, but flat style is proving to be some trouble to learn, maybe you want to try the Staggered style. Staggered is a style that uses the same fingers and arc directions as flat, but you position your key placement in a way to better match the directions of the arcs. For example, you can use DRMK instead of DFJK, where R is up, M is down, or DCUK for the opposite verticality, C for down and U for up. These might not be the most comfortable positions for you on your keyboard, so move this location around a bit to find something you like. For example, when I first started playing Intralism, I used HU and LP, with U for up and L for down. This was much easier for me to get used to than jumping into the flat style right away. After building my muscle memory over a couple of days playing like this, I then switched to flat. Leverhides is another player who used this style to assist him in his transition from one-handed styles to the two-handed flat style. Some players keep the default bindings and will play with both hands. There's two main styles that play like this. The first one I'm going to cover is the crowded style. Crowded is when you play on WASD or the arrow keys, but you use both hands. You can easily see why I decided to name this crowded. It can be easier to make mishits with this style, but it's also fairly easy to get used to, since WASD and the arrow keys match the arc directions. Players like Makaii and Fehleno use this style. Fehleno is interesting. He uses the Numpad style, 8-4-6-2, with both hands, so he's technically using a mixed style, Numpad crowded. The other default two-hand style is double default. Double default is a style that will use both WASD and the arrow keys, not just one or the other. This is similar to how you would play two-handed mode, but instead of two crosshairs to worry about, you only have one. Some players will play using one hand primarily, using the second hand as support for faster songs. Leverhides used to play like this before he switched to two hands. Kiri uses the arrow keys, but will have a second hand on S to help hit triples with the down arc and quad arcs. Other players may use both the WASD and arrow keys evenly. Depending on how you use double default, it may be considered a gray area between one-handed and two-handed styles. After all, Kiri's version of double default only uses one key on the second hand. Is that really a two-hand style? Some would argue it does, while others like myself would say it's closer to a one-handed support style. Last but certainly not least is the alternative style. With most other two-hand styles, the two fingers on each hand are bound to perpendicular directions. For example, left down, or left up, or right down. But other players, like Pachinka, play with parallel arcs on each hand, so left-right on one hand and up-down on the other. This style may be even harder to wrap your head around compared to the other two-handed styles, but it does come with its advantages. Hitting and reading up-down or left-right doubles can become a lot easier. The layout may be really intuitive to some players, and you get to be a cool kid that uses such an unusual playstyle. You're so hot. In this example video by Pachinka, you can see that he has his hands laid out in a directional manner, with his left hand hitting the vertical arcs by using keys from different rows, while his right hand takes care of the horizontal arcs using keys of the same row. There is one additional style that I would like to talk about, the max style. This style is like the Buddhist religion. Buddhism is compatible with most other religions. This style is compatible with most other styles. I've called it max after the funny map Delta Max, where the only way to get a good score is by binding every arc to one or two keys and playing with those keys. This is not a joke. Don't do what I did and vibrate my hand over the arrow keys. That shit hurts. Max style is any style that also includes other keys to hit double, triple, or quad arcs. This can be helpful for one-handed players who struggle with triples and quads, and even for two-handed players who want to hit quads more accurately. Playing with this style does require you to relearn how to play the game though. To effectively use the max style, you would need to teach yourself how to hit doubles, triples, or quads with the max keys you had defined, instead of using your normal playing keys. Lever used to play with a max key that hit those pesky up-down doubles that many default players struggle with. If you have a hard time hitting specific doubles, triples, or quads, a max style may help you out, but it can screw with your muscle memory if you think you're ever going to play with a different style later. Phew. That was a lot of styles, and these are just with the keyboard. There are other styles I want to talk about, including the DK bongos, console controllers, and even spoons? But this video has gone on long enough, and these unique styles will have to wait just a little longer to shine in the next Welcome to Intralism. What style do you use? Do you use one of the styles I covered in this video, or do you use some wacky style that no one else has tried? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. If you're bilingual, please consider translating the subtitles into another language. Link for that is in the description. Thank you for everyone who talked to me about their playstyles, and thank you to those who provided videos of you playing with your styles. This video would not have been possible without your help. I have links for all of you in the description. Thank you so much. Hey, school has finally ended for me, and I want to get some serious work done with Welcome to Intralism. I hope to make this a more consistent series over the summer. I'm planning to eventually release a video for WTI once every week, as long as there are more topics to discuss, of course. There's only so much I can cover regarding gameplay, bugs, and other aspects of Intralism. Mapping, however, I could talk about that for months. I have a lot of mapping topics I want to cover, and I think as time goes on, this series will focus much more on mapping than other topics. After the Weird Playstyles video, I plan on making a tutorial video for Decolator's storyboard animation tool, so you can easily add awesome animated images to your map's storyboard. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.